The laziest legitimate way to turn $10,000 into about $400,000 is not to trade more, research more, or guess which stock becomes the next Nvidia. It is to make one boring decision: put the money into a low-cost index fund, reinvest the dividends, and then stop touching it for almost 40 years. That sounds too simple because every part of modern finance is designed to make you feel like you should be doing something. But the strange truth is this: the version of you who checks the market every day can lose to the version of you who barely remembers the password. The paradox. Here is the mistake almost every serious beginner makes: you assume investing works like the rest of life. At work, more effort usually helps. In fitness, more discipline usually shows. In school, more studying usually improves the grade. So when you bring that same instinct into the market, it feels responsible. You read more headlines, you watch more predictions, you open the app more often. You make adjustments because doing nothing feels reckless. But long-term investing punishes the wrong kind of effort. The more often you touch the portfolio, the more chances you create to buy high, sell low, chase a trend, abandon a good fund, or panic during a temporary crash. Over 25 years, you can make 6,000 trades and still lose to someone who made one decision and let it run. That is the paradox. In most areas of life, action creates progress. In investing, unnecessary action often creates damage. The goal is not to become busier with your money. The goal is to build a system that needs less of you. The math. Now look at the math, because this is where the whole idea stops sounding like a motivational quote and starts becoming a calculator problem. If you put $10,000 into a broad market index fund and it compounds at roughly 10% a year, you do not need a miracle. You need time. After 10 years, that money grows to about $25,900. After 20 years, it becomes about $67,300. After 30 years, it reaches about $174,500. By year 39, it crosses roughly $411,400. By year 40, it is around $452,500. You did not add another dollar. You did not pick a winning stock. You did not move in and out of the market. The dividends were reinvested, the fund kept owning the market, and time did the heavy lifting. This is what the rule of 72 is trying to show you. Take 72 divided by your annual return, and you get the rough number of years it takes for your money to double. At 10%, your money doubles about every 7.2 years. That means $10,000 becomes $20,000, then $40,000, then $80,000, then $160,000, then $320,000. The early years feel slow because the dollar gains are small, but the later years are where compounding becomes almost unfair. The first doubling adds $10,000. A later doubling can add hundreds of thousands. The hard part is that most people quit during the boring part. They look at the first decade and think nothing is happening. But compounding is not linear. It spends years looking unimpressive, then suddenly starts doing the work you could never do manually. The fund. So what do you actually buy? Not a hot stock, not a prediction, not whatever your coworker says is about to explode. The lazy vehicle is a low-cost index fund. An index fund is just a basket. Instead of trying to guess whether Apple, Microsoft, Nvidia, Tesla, or some company you have never heard of will be the big winner over the next 40 years, you buy the whole field. A basic S&P 500 index fund owns pieces of roughly 500 of the largest public companies in America. A total stock market fund can own more than 3,000 U.S. companies at once. That matters because you do not have to know which company will dominate the next decade. If the winners are inside the basket, you participate. If one company collapses, it is usually too small to destroy the whole thing. This is why low-cost index funds are so hard to beat. They do not try to be brilliant. They try to be consistent. And over long periods, consistency beats most cleverness. Even professional active managers struggle here. They have analysts, software research teams, and expensive offices, yet most of them still fail to beat the basic index over long periods. So the lazy investor asks a better question: why pay someone to guess when you can own the market and let capitalism do the guessing for you? The fee trap. Now comes the part that looks small enough to ignore and big enough to ruin the ending fees. A low-cost index fund might charge around 0.03% a year. Some funds charge even less. An actively managed fund might charge 1% a year, sometimes more. On paper, that difference sounds harmless. 1% feels like a rounding error. But compounding works in both directions. It can compound your wealth, and it can compound the cost of every bad decision attached to that wealth. Take the same $10,000 growing at 10% for 40 years. In a fund charging around 0.03%, you end up with roughly $447,000. Put that same money in a fund charging 1%, and the ending balance drops to about $314,000. That tiny-looking fee costs around $133,000. Not because the market changed, not because you picked a different economy, not because you were unlucky. The fee simply kept taking a little piece every year until the missing money became larger than most people's original retirement account. That is why low cost is not a detail, it is the strategy, the account stack. Once you have the fund, the next lazy decision is where to hold it, because the same investment can leave you with very different results depending on the account wrapped around it. The first stop is your 401k, but only up to the employer match. If your company matches your contribution that is an immediate return, you do not need to earn from the market. If they match up to 4% of your salary, you put in 4%. Skipping that is leaving free money on the table. After that, look at the HSA if you qualify. It is one of the most powerful accounts in the U.S. tax code because contributions can go in pre-tax. The money can grow tax-free and qualified medical withdrawals can come out tax-free. Then comes the Roth IRA if your income allows it. You pay taxes, now invest the money, and qualified withdrawals in retirement can come out tax-free. After those, you can go back to the 401k and contribute more toward the annual limit. In 2026, that limit is listed at $24,500 for workers under 50, with an additional $8,000 catch-up for people 50 and older. The Roth IRA limit is listed at $7,500, and the HSA limit is listed at $4,400 for individuals and $8,750 for families. Anything left after that can go into a regular taxable brokerage account. This is the lazy order match HSA Roth IRA more 401k, then taxable brokerage. One simple stack repeated every year. The automation. This is the moment the strategy becomes truly lazy. You do not wake up every month and ask, is today a good time to invest? You do not wait for the perfect entry point. You do not watch 3 market forecasts and then decide whether to move. You set the rule once. Pick a day like the 15th of every month. Pick an amount, even $100, if that is what fits your budget. Link your checking account to the brokerage. Set the transfer to happen automatically. Set the investment to go into the same low-cost index fund. Turn on dividend reinvestment. Then stop negotiating with yourself. That one automation does something most people cannot do consistently. It invests without emotion. When the market is high, your $100 buys fewer shares. When the market is down, your $100 buys more shares. You do not have to identify the bottom. You do not have to feel brave during a crash. The system just keeps buying. That is why automation is so powerful. It turns investing from a monthly emotional debate into a decision you already made in the past. The lazy investor is not lazy because they care less. They are lazy because they know their future self will be tired, distracted, scared, tempted, and busy. So they remove that future self from the decision, the discipline. But there is still one job left, and it is harder than it sounds. Do not touch it when everything looks broken. At some point, your account will fall. Not maybe, it will. The S&P 500 dropped about 56% during the 2008 financial crisis. In March 2020, the market fell roughly 34% in 5 weeks. Those moments do not feel like buying opportunities while you are living through them. They feel like the end of the system. That is when the active version of you wants to step in. Sell now, wait for clarity, move to cash, come back when things feel safer. But safer usually means more expensive. The lazy strategy only works if you refuse to turn temporary panic into a permanent decision. Your job is not to predict the bottom. Your job is not to prove you are fearless. Your job is to leave the system alone long enough for the next recovery to matter. The market does not need you to be brilliant every day. It needs you to stop interrupting it on the worst days. The real threat. Now here is the part most investing videos skip. The lazy strategy does not usually fail because people cannot understand index funds. It fails because the rest of their life becomes too expensive to let the strategy run. A $700 car payment feels normal because everyone around you has one. A mortgage that eats nearly half your take-home pay feels responsible because homeownership is supposed to mean progress. Childcare at $17,000 a year per kid does not feel optional. Credit card balances build quietly. Lifestyle creep hides inside nicer dinners, better vacations, upgraded phones, and subscriptions you barely notice. Then there is the renovation that was supposed to cost $40,000 and somehow ends at $90,000. Or the investment property that sounded like passive income but drained your savings before it produced a single dollar. None of these decisions looks reckless in isolation. That is what makes them dangerous. They look like adulthood. They look like success. They look like the next reasonable step. But every dollar leaking into those choices is a dollar that cannot sit inside the lazy system for 40 years. So the real threat is not just a market crash. It is the expensive life that forces you to unplug the machine before compounding has time to do its best work. So bring it back to the title. The laziest way to turn $10,000 into about $400,000 is not a secret strategy. It is not a stock tip. It is not a prediction about the next crash. It is one low-cost index fund, one smart account order, one automatic transfer, reinvested dividends, fewer logins, fewer opinions, fewer emotional decisions, and roughly 40 years of refusing to interrupt the math. That is the part most people underestimate. The setup is easy. The waiting is hard. The world will give you endless reasons to touch the account. Stop the transfer, chase the trend, or spend the margin. But lazy investing is not laziness by neglect. It is laziness by design. You make the decision once, then spend the next 4 decades protecting it from yourself.